Seeing a different world. When someone who has been indoctrinated into the cult of authority finally disentangles himself from the superstition, the first thing that happens is that he sees a drastically different reality. He observes the effects of the authority superstition, which infiltrate nearly every aspect of most people's lives. He sees things as they actually are, not as he had formerly imagined them to be. Most of the time, when he sees so-called law enforcement in action, he recognizes it as raw, illegitimate, and immoral thuggery being used to extort and control people in order to serve the will of politicians. The exception to this is when the police use force to stop others who are actually guilty of acts of aggression, ironically, the very acts which the police routinely commit for the ruling class. When the recovering status watches various political rituals, whether a presidential election or a legislative debate in Congress or a local zoning board passing some new ordinance, he sees it for what it is, the acting out of delusions and hallucinations by people who have been indoctrinated into a completely irrational cult. Any discussions in the media of what public policy should be, or which representatives should be elected, or what legislation should be enacted, appear to one who has escaped the superstition as useful and rational as well-dressed, attractive, respected-looking people seriously discussing how Santa Claus should handle the next Christmas. To one who has escaped the myth of authority, the premise upon which all political discussions rests disintegrates, and every bit of the rhetoric which stems from the superstition is recognized as being utterly insane. The unindoctrinated individual sees every campaign speech, every political argument, every discussion in the news about anything political, every CNN broadcast of another debate on the House floor over some new piece of legislation as a display of the symptoms of a profound delusion due to the blind acceptance of utterly insane cult-like dogma. All voting, campaigning, writing to one's congressman, signing petitions suddenly appear no more rational or useful than praying to the volcano god to grant its blessings to the tribe. One who has been deprogrammed sees not only the futility in all political action, but sees that such actions, no matter what their intended goals, actually reinforce the superstition, just as everyone in a tribe praying to a volcano god would reinforce the idea that there is a volcano god. So begging politicians for favors reinforces the idea that there is a rightful ruling class and their commands are law, and that disobedience to such laws is a moral imperative. Those whom most people now regard with great respect and who are often called honorable are recognized as delusional, God-complex lunatics by those who have escaped the authority myth. The unindoctrinated would take no more pride in shaking the president's hand than he would shaking the hand of any other psychotic, narcissistic mass murderer. The men who wear black dresses and wield wooden hammers and refer to themselves as the court are seen as the madmen they are. Those who wear badges and uniforms and imagine themselves to be something other than mere human beings are not seen by the deprogrammed as noble warriors for law and order, but as confused souls suffering from what is little more than a mental disorder. Of course, those who have given up the superstition of authority can still fear the damage which the megalomaniacs and their mercenary soldiers and police are capable of inflicting, but the mercenaries' actions are no longer seen as being in any way legitimate or rational or moral. Those who have escaped the myth begin to see what those actions are influenced by. Their official badge are as dangerous as the people, high on PCP, and for the same reason, because they are hallucinating a reality which is not there, which leads them to act out violently, unrestrained by a rational thought process. Those who have escaped the authority superstition when confronted by a police officer may still act as they would if confronted by a rabid dog, speaking softly, behaving in a submissive manner, and not making sudden movements. But it is not out of respect for either the law enforcer or a rabid dog. It is out of fear of the danger posed by a brain that is malfunctioning because it is infected by a destructive disease, be it rabies or the belief in authority. When believers in authority commit acts of aggression, imagining such acts to be righteous because they are called law, their targets have few options. When a tax collector or police officer or some other enforcer of the will of politicians attempts to extort, harass, control, or assault those who have escaped the myth of authority, the targets of the legal aggression can either go along with what they know to be injustice, or they can try somehow to circumvent or hide from the legal aggressors, or they can forcibly resist the aggressors. It is unfortunate that the last option is ever necessary, because though using defensive force is morally justified even when it's illegal, it is sad that one good person would ever have to use violence against another good person simply because the latter has had his perception of right and wrong twisted and perverted by an irrational superstition. Even the murderous thugs of the most brutal regimes in history, due to their faith in the authority myth, thought they were doing their duty. They thought, on some level, that their actions were noble and righteous, or they would not have committed them. Such mindless loyalty to authority often leads the intended victims with only two options: submit to tyranny or kill the deluded law enforcers. It would be far better for everyone if, before forcible resistance become necessary, the mercenaries of the state could be deprogrammed out of their delusion so as to avoid the necessity of having to scare, hurt, or even kill them to stop them from committing evil. Author's personal note: the nicest thing you can do for anyone who has been duped into acting as a pawn of the oppressive machine called government is to do whatever you can do to persuade him to rethink his loyalty to the myth of authority. If all else fails, give him a copy of this book. As uncomfortable as that might be, you might be doing a lot of his potential future victims a huge favor, and you might even be doing the officer himself a huge favor by negating the need for one of his future intended victims to maim or kill him.